This is Kurt Anderson, and I'm talking to a guy who calls himself Mr. Media, but he won't tell me his first name.
Today on Mr. Media, I'll talk to Minnesota-based novelist Cynthia Kraack. She's the author of a new work of futuristic fiction called Harvesting Ashwood. Stick around. I've already seen how this interview ends, and you're going to be amazed in 30 minutes. Mr. Media is recorded live before a studio audience of guys who can see the future, including three-time Mr. Media guest, the amazing Kreskin, who really should know better by now. In the new media capital of the world, St. Petersburg, Florida. The first time that author Cynthia Kraack was on Mr. Media promoting the first book in her Ashwood trilogy, I told you guys to go out and read it. This interview is going to proceed on the notion that most of you took that advice and did. Now, the second book in the series, Harvesting Ashwood, is out, and it's just as compelling as the first. Now, I'm not usually a guy looking for a bleak, futuristic fiction, but there is something irrepressibly hopeful in Kraack's characterizations and plotting that keeps me honed in. So jumping forward, and a bit back for new readers, Harvesting Ashwood introduces us to Minnesota in the year 2037. There still isn't much trust in the world, not between business and government, and certainly not when it comes to protecting individual liberties. Federal employees are generally corrupt and corruptible. Security is a daily grind, and feeding the residents and employees of the Ashwood estate is an unrelenting challenge. Fortunately, our heroine, Anne Hartford, is still the most resourceful woman in these somewhat United States. Now, if you like the works of George Orwell, or even if you were just a fan of something more modern like Kiefer Sutherland's TV series 24, there's a lot to like and enjoy in Cynthia Kraack's Ashwood series. Cynthia Kraack, welcome back to Mr. Media.
Well, thank you for the invitation.
Always happy to have you. Always happy to have another one of your books in front of me.
Thank you.
I enjoy these. I want to see this stuff get picked up by a bigger audience, so I'll do what I can.
Great.
Now, I was trying to notice there while I was going through the introduction when I mentioned Kiefer Sutherland and 24. Did I notice that you were kind of like, I don't quite get that?
Yeah. Well, no. This was a learning experience for me about writing speculative fiction today. Is that readers really expect it to be thrilling as well? That and that was a different element for me to master, is that you can't just create this futuristic place and have things gracefully unroll. They need to be there needs to be this kind of constant elevation of tension and possibility. And so I was actually appreciating the comparison. And 24 was one of my favorite series, so I liked it. I thank you.
Well, I think the thing is, you can't just write a story that's unrelentingly bleak without something happening. And if you pardon my language for a minute, you want to bring in the male audience, you got to blow shit up.
Right. Exactly. In fact, that is a criticism I've gotten at times, is that I don't show enough of the blowing up. Let's really have, see it more on screen. But I think that's a bit of a difference between the female and male writer as well. So.
Well, but now I gotta say, in your defense, and of course because I am a fan, there is a sequence in the book, which I won't go into, where it's a big action sequence.
Yes.
Stuff does blow up.
Yeah.
And I used the word stuff that time. I don't think I need to, stuff does blow up. We have our action heroes in that sequence, and there's a payoff, and it changes your view of Anne Hartford. It changes your view of the people around her supporting cast, and it changes your view of the people who you thought may have been in her corner, and maybe they are, maybe they're not. It's a big turning point, and I thought that you handled the action and the blowing shit up
Right.
very well.
Right.
I was very impressed by that.
Thank you. Thank you. And actually, I found it kind of fun to write. It was there were parts of that particular sequence that I found myself kind of having to wait until the house was empty to kind of act out and see and see like how long could you exactly do that with only a dog to witness my actions. But thank you. I appreciate the praise for it. So
well, next time when you get everybody out of the house, but you want a bit of an audience, you've got my name and number on Skype. Call me. I'd be happy to watch, and
Okay.
I think that'd be kind of entertaining, and we can get some extra footage for the next interview.
Ooh, I'll have to make sure it's like not one of those times I'm in the author's sweatpants and t-shirt kind of look.
Whatever works for you,
Right.
So you put in this book. I mean, another long, hard year on the farm. Poor folks of Ashwood. What did these poor, non-existent characters ever do to you to cause you to put them through the hell that you put them through?
Oh, it's interesting. Anne Hartford, our long-standing, long-suffering. You have to remember there's 6 years between, and you have to assume that those years were also some happy times. So, but the kind of pure stress she's under makes me both admire her and also understand how flawed she is. That she is a person who probably couldn't see the sunflowers as something worth wandering through, because she's just so work-driven. But if you think of stories of people who came out of the Depression or the Holocaust or whatever, they are permanently changed by the experience, and that's what this woman went through at a very young, formative age. And I am through with the third book, but going back to do a substantial rewrite, and she is finally heading. It's 17 years out, so, and she is finally kind of letting her hair down a bit, and seeing some of the potential to be just more of a rounded person, less of a work-driven kind of mother as well. So
I'm assuming, and we know that there's a third book, that things probably get worse before they get better, if they get better?
They change. So we had the first book takes place soon after the economic depression, and at that point the government needs to really step in and be the controlling force. And this one we're kind of in this murky stage of, we have a chance to make things different, but will we, or will we just recreate? And the next one is definitely a different future. And it has its ups and its downs, but it's definitely far different than what we see in this book. I won't tell you more. That wouldn't be fair.
Oh, okay. All right. But will the third book be the final book?
That's my plan. Although, having finished it, there is a possibility Phoebe, who's the young daughter in this book, becomes a very curious kind of adult. And I have to say that I'm intrigued by the thought of doing a fourth book with Phoebe as the main character. And it may not be formally a part of this storyline, but it's still connected in a character and in a future. So we'll see, because she's definitely her mother's daughter with some influence from her stepmother.
And there's some implications of genetic modifications.
Yes.
With the children. So
right.
So guys, stand by. We could be talking superpowers here.
It's true. Could be. Yeah.
There's definitely something special about some of these children, and I'm trying not to give away too much because.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's right. I mean, we have two kids who have had some genetic engineering, and then we have the two who haven't, and it's kind of a curious, nature versus nurture about what that will all result in as they grow up.
I'm thinking maybe a call from Marvel Comics, you know, Minnesota X-Men.
Oh my God. Yeah, they'd wear snowmobile suits or something.
I don't know. Uh, you tie in events from book one, and actually, if, I say events from book one, but events that actually happen sort of before book one come back to us in book two, having to do with Anne, having to do with David. So it was interesting that you know, a lot of times when you do a series like this or a trilogy,
Right.
a writer will talk about things that happened in the previous book just as background. You actually made things that were told as background in the first book very important to the story in the second book, which
Right.
I thought was a good device. I enjoyed that.
Oh, thank you.
So we've talked about 6 years have passed from the
Yes.
first book to the second book. Now, is it when you go forward to the third book? Is that 17 years from the end of Harvesting Ashwood, or is that 17
Yes.
years from the beginning? Okay.
So it's 25 years from start of the trilogy to the end, approximately.
So
So 23 years, I guess.
Anne and
Yeah.
Anne and David, pretty mature at that point.
Yes, they are, and the kids are our young adults. So a different time of life as well for Anne and David to be relating to these kids. So that's different. That'll be a different challenge. And it's also interesting. I mean, I find myself as I'm rewriting it, trying not to get too influenced by things that are happening today. For instance, the whole use of drones in Afghanistan and Iraq has kind of opened up a whole arena for for doing some research and understanding what the potential for good and kind of not good might be about drones in the United States domestically. And so each of these books are minorly influenced by what's happening and kind of thinking of where that might go. In this book, the whole food issue, I mean, the whole issue of people not having enough to eat, seems to be in all of my books, which I don't know if it's because I grew up in an agricultural area. It certainly is like one of my interests. I do volunteer work with food shelves, but it always just hits me as how terribly wrong it is that so many people go to bed hungry in the United States. And so in Harvesting Ashwood, they finally have gotten to a production point, but now we get into that kind of old cycle of government and politicians using the food as a bargaining chip, and who suffers, but the people, that are kind of more on the fringe, or on not the fringe, but on the edge of a safe life versus a life with more deprivation. So
Yeah, the government uses food as a weapon.
Yeah, both a power tool, right? Yeah. Exactly.
I know. I read this book, and there are times where I just want to take the cast out for a steak or something. I just feel like, come on, let's put some food in your stomach, guys. Move the story along a little better.
And I have a person in my writing group who grew up on a farm in Iowa, who says it's difficult for him because as bad a year as it may have been on their farm, they always ate well. I mean, it was like the only thing, you might not get new clothes, you might, the car may need to wait another year or two to get replaced, but you always had steaks, or you had really fresh eggs and stuff. And so the concept to him of people living on a large farm and perhaps not having a bounty of food is stretches his belief system, I guess. But it's that, and there's also the water piece about having clean water and valuing how much water could become another one of those, could become like gas or anything else as far as a valuable entity that gets controlled.
Well, let's give the benefit of the doubt here that there might be a few people watching this interview, listening to it,
Okay.
who might not know background of the story.
Okay.
Ashwood is a giant estate,
Right.
in northern Minnesota, right?
Mid Minnesota.
Mid
More.
Minnesota.
Yeah. Right.
You know what? I'm in Florida. It's all
Yeah, I know.
northern
So
Minnesota to
everything
me.
is north. Right.
Everything is north. And give how many people in your mind or in the stories? How many people work on the estate?
Sure.
How big is the estate? Just so people can have a sense of the scope of what our hero here, Anne, and her husband, to a lesser degree, David, are running and overseeing.
Okay. Well, when at the end of the first Ashwood book, the estate was probably about 1,000 acres and included both dairy and produce and grains. And by this point, it's more in the area of like about 4,000 to 5,000 acres. And it's also evolved from being owned by the government to being more owned by Anne. And so she has a bit more kind of entrepreneurial interest in making sure it's successful, and not just as much pressure from the government to make sure she's producing the quotas of food that she needs. And some of those old things come up that you want to have something to hand off to your kids, and try to create some security for the family's future. And so that how many workers? There are probably in this book somewhere around 25 to 30 kids who work on the farm. And then I would say, day laborers, whatever, another 100 or so people. So because there's more, so there's probably about altogether 150 people that live and or work on this estate.
So these are people that Anne and the staff, they have to feed. They provide uniforms for them.
Right.
Sometimes they have to provide shelter. So
right.
It's a big operation.
Right.
It's not just mom and pop Kent.
No, it's it's a serious. The estates were created by the government to feed people as well as provide jobs and safe havens for the kids. So they're not just the little old Wisconsin dairy farm or something. These are very large, almost kind of corporate-sized farms in today's world. Yeah.
Well, I'm just looking at the clock, and I want to make sure we talk about something relative, similar. But you were telling me before we went on that you've actually been doing some new fiction,
right,
not related to Ashwood, that has shocked your friends and writing compatriots because it's light and funny.
Right.
What's wrong with you? What happened?
What happened? Actually, after Harvesting Ashwood came out, I was pushing also to finish the first serious draft of the third book, and just finally found myself kind of needing an intellectual break as well. Just a time to kind of like write some stuff that would that didn't need as much thought, as much kind of like, why does this exist? So, and what are the implications, and how are people going to read it and think about it? And so I mentioned to you, I started doing a novella about a women's golf league, and there's a lot of humor. There's just kind of stupid stuff like, golf balls ricocheting off of a cop car hood, or things of that kind of sort. That I don't know if I'll ever do anything really with it, but it provided some hours of writing in a way that I could kind of relax as well.
Caddyshack for chicks, is that what we're talking?
What?
I said Caddyshack for chicks, is that what we're talking about?
Well, it's just not going to, I don't know, no, there's not kind of that element probably. These women are not perhaps that racy. Not as much drinking going on in the course.
I think I would encourage the drinking and a lot of nighttime golf. I think I'd...
Well, that's true. And because there's a little bit of that one that's perhaps autobiographical, and the difference between a golf league of women after work and a morning golf league with women is a whole different. The competitive level and the language and the liquid drinks, the Diet Coke in the morning and something else at night makes it a more interesting game. Totally.
Do you play?
I do play, not well, but I do play. Yeah.
Okay, I would guess that. All right, I was just curious. So let me come back around. You mentioned your writing group,
yes,
writers group, and I know the last time we talked a bit about that. How you know, how important is it to you to have that group of people to, you know, share your stories with? And of course, it's not a one-way thing. You're reading their stories, you're hearing about their stories. And would you encourage other people who are interested in writing to find a group in their area and go that way?
Yes, I would. I would recommend it. I'm always surprised when people want to network, who think they have a really good book in themselves, or they've written something and they want to get it published. I'm so frequently surprised that no one's ever read it. They don't want anybody to read it because they don't really feel like they need that input from someone.
Or they're paranoid about copyright.
What?
Or they're paranoid about copyright. I hear that a lot.
Could be. And you know, coming out of a journalism background, I was so used to copy editors ripping apart your, you know, 1,000 words into a 300-word little insert that I'm more. I have a thicker skin, perhaps. But I do find a writing group to be critically important. They often are the ones who might call a weakness in a plot, or say this character is not being authentic to how you've, you know, drafted them earlier, or make a comment like, you know, you don't harvest that kind of grain in June. It doesn't come out of the ground till October. But there's also a lot of responsibility with it, because not only are you doing your own work, you are, if you're a good member, you're reading other people's work and giving them careful feedback, constructive feedback. You know, for me, writing is still a craft that you just continue to perfect. Maybe Stephen King and others don't need a writing group, but at this point in my life, I still find it valuable. Plus, it's a peer group, because writing is a very solo activity. So to have that kind of peer group that you meet with, whether it's weekly, monthly, whatever, creates a circle of support that's valuable as well.
How long have you been in this group?
I've been in this group about 5 years now. And the interesting part is that there is one other woman who is very infrequently there because of her work schedule. So it's all guys and me, which, you know, at times is interesting because they read something about an Anne or whatever, and they click it through their own perception of what a woman must feel like at that kind of time. And sometimes it rings true, and sometimes they're off base. But the same is true about, they can call attention to saying, you know, David probably wouldn't go that way, or you've got Paul's reaction down to a T, and I really value that, so that, because few of us can write both sexes perfectly articulated, I think.
I write very well what's going on in the heads of animals, just in case there are any editors out there looking.
Oh no!
You know, if you're looking for someone who can write the thoughts of a dog
or a squirrel or something.
Squirrels, they're great. You know, it's you know.
I have a friend who's written a whole book about two amorous squirrels in Central Park, but we won't go there either.
I hope it's a picture book.
No, not that kind. No.
So when will we see the third book?
I'm thinking it will be probably 2014. I don't think it'll be.
It's a long time to wait. Can you just send it to me now?
Not in the state it's in. Sorry, Bob. You're gonna have to wait.
All right. Well, there's my excuse for keeping Mr. Media going for another year and a half to 2 years. All right. Now you know, folks, because I'm going to wait for the new Cynthia Kraack book, the third Ashwood book. And folks, you can find Ashwood and the second book, Harvesting Ashwood by Cynthia Kraack, in great bookstores everywhere, I hope. Or if you can't, or you're just lazy like I am, you can find it right here at MrMedia.com. There's a link right down here. I'm pointing over here. I'm not being rude. There's a link over here. You can just click on the book cover, and it will take you to Amazon. You can order it. You'll even get probably a little bit of a discount there from Amazon. Yep. And you still have the website, CynthiaKraack.com?
I do. It was just actually redesigned before the book came out, so it now contains a blog and kind of Twitter feeds and all those type things as well.
Very good. And so CynthiaKraack.com, it's Kraack.
Correct.
.com, and Twitter. Are you on Facebook as well?
Yes.
All right. So Look her up, find her, but read the books, for God's sakes. Because when we come back here in 2014, I expect everyone out there will have read the first 2 books so we can have an intelligent conversation. Probably by then we'll have it so that people can actually, dial in with their own video and ask you questions directly.
Great.
I'm sure that's where we're heading, so we'll see. That's my speculative fiction for the day. Cynthia Kraack, always a pleasure. Enjoy the work, enjoy the lady, and thank you again so much for joining us, Mr. Media, today.
Okay, thank you.
Pleasure. You can see and hear almost 1,000 Mr. Media interviews by visiting our main site, mrmedia.com, mrmedia.com, or check out the more than 200 video interviews on the Mr. Media radio site on YouTube. And I'd sure appreciate if you'd show some love for Mr. Media's advertisers, including Stitcher. Apple named Stitcher a top 5 news app of 2011. It's a free mobile app for your smartphone or tablet that lets you listen to your favorite shows and discover the best of news, entertainment, and sports on demand. You can listen whenever you want to more than 5,000 shows, get customized recommendations, and discover what your friends are listening to. My own list of Stitcher favorites is pretty eclectic. I start my day with an hour of MSNBC's Morning Joe with Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski. Then it's the latest 2-minute update from the Onion News Network. After that, I'll listen to WTF with Mark Maron, Here's the Thing with Alec Baldwin, HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher, and excerpts from E's Chelsea Lately and The Soup with Joel McHale. Also in regular rotation on my Stitcher playlist, the BS Report with ESPN's Bill Simmons, the TechCrunch headlines, and the Don Geronimo Show. The latest episodes of each show, whether originating from broadcasts, cable TV, radio syndication, or podcasts, are continuously updated. Stitcher is a free app for your iPhone, iPad, Kindle, Fire, BlackBerry, Droid, and more. And show your support of Mr. Media by getting, did I mention it's free? The app at stitcher.com/Mr. Media. That's stitcher.com/MRmedia. Stitcher Smart Radio, the smarter way to listen to radio. We're also supported by Audible. Check out Audible's 30-day trial membership and download the audiobook version of the book everyone's been talking about, 50 Shades of Grey by E.L. James. Sign up for your free trial today at audible.com/radio. Again, audibletrial.com/radio. And finally, if you need a disc jockey for a wedding, bar mitzvah, corporate event, or just a big old party, please consider calling 1-800-DIAL-DJs, the party authority for all your party entertainment needs. You can call 1-800-DIAL-DJs or go to their website, 1-800-DIAL-DJs.com, and tell them Mr. Media sent you. And thanks for listening.